Often it's like, I listen often to Bob Marley very, very frequently.
Bob Marley.
Yeah, Michael Jackson. Sometimes I'll be if I'm feeling I need to be like psyched up and start dancing and that.
You start dancing.
Yeah, it's quite nice to do that before stage. But these are just random things that I do.
I'm Jolt Bognar, and this is Living the Creative Life. Our guest today is cellist Sekou Kane Mason. Sekou, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation about life in music.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I was so delighted to have the opportunity to hear you and Harry perform 2 nights ago here at how would we describe this space? It's a bar, restaurant?
Yeah. It's a wonderful feeling to be very, very close to the audience and be in a setting where talking to them also feels like an intimate conversation.
Is there something that we can take from the setting of the bar and perhaps make it feel more comfortable for young people specifically to come?
A concert hall and the way symphonic music is presented in a concert hall is in many ways ideal for the sound of the music and to have complete silence from the audience is quite essential for the focus of really, really hearing the music. But it's not to say that that's the only way to experience it. And I enjoy playing in a range of different settings and seeing the differences that brings to me as a performer and the differences that means to the audiences as well. So I think, maybe the ideal is to have both, to be quite honest, and to have a range of ways of presenting this music, because that then feels like there's a genuine intention and creativity every time that we present the music. It's not just out of habit, this is how it's done. It's there's a genuine intention, and I think that's something that maybe the audience can feel.
And then there's, of course, the question of the music that you shared with us on that occasion. I've never quite been to a program that diverse in its musical offerings. You did everything from Bach to jazz and improvisation. Is that jumping between styles, does that feel comfortable for you?
Yeah, for me it was it's a nice challenge, and I think the thing that tied the program together was improvisation being a part of every piece in that program, and it's really, really enjoyable to explore all of those different styles. It's quite challenging because every piece was much shorter than I'm used to doing in a recital, for example. So you have to really be in the world of each piece and then move to the next one quite quickly.
So for young musicians who are wanting to do what you did there, they want to start. How do you start, and how can you get better?
If you listen to improvised music and then find what you like about it, try to understand how it works from a listening point of view, I find that to be a really, really strong way of getting into it.
So if you perform this huge range of repertoire in different styles, is there a style in which you feel most artistically free, where you can just be yourself and not worry as much? I mean, if there's a big concerto that you're performing, there's tradition, you're following a lot of instructions in complicated scores in a lot of cases, but maybe that's where you feel freest.
Yeah, but I mean, in a way, the detail that you get in a score, if you've really spent the time with it and understanding it, then that can be sometimes the most freeing. I would say I'm most comfortable or happy if I was playing a cello part in a Haydn string quartet. I think that's like peak happiness for me, and I think that's because I spent a lot of time particularly as a student and a child playing string quartets and getting to know this repertoire.
You seem to find a zone that appears, at least to us as the audience, to be really serene and peaceful, and you're in a zone. Am I perceiving that correctly?
It's nice of you to say. I don't know. I wouldn't. Yeah, it's not necessarily peaceful, because that would. I think there is a lot going on quite quickly in my mind, particularly when I'm performing and I become hyperactive or hyper aware before. Certainly before I go on stage and as I'm on stage. I like to, before I perform, to usually be around people and having a conversation with people. I don't like so much to be on my own in the room.
If that hyper-awareness becomes on the uncomfortable side, and you don't, for example, have the outlet of connecting with people, are there other strategies that might help you find this wonderful sense of serenity and musical communication?
Often would listen to something before I go on stage as well, because then I find I can try to focus my energy and attention on what's going on in the music, and that's a helpful headspace for what I'm about to do on stage. And also it means that I'm sort of comforted by whatever I'm listening to, and not necessarily distracted, but I can put my focus on that. And often it's like I listen often to Bob Marley very frequently.
Bob Marley.
Yeah, Michael Jackson. Sometimes I'll be if I'm feeling I need to be like psyched up and start dancing, and that
You start dancing?
Yeah, it's quite nice to do that before stage. But these are just random things that I do.
I'm just taking a look at the overall picture in your musical life so far. You're just in your mid-20s, and you've already accomplished so much. Has it felt surprising or even overwhelming, this upward trajectory that, I mean, you're really seeing kind of a world stage? I think the first time I heard you speak was, I think, on National Public Radio in the United States.
Yeah.
So you're reaching a global audience.
It's really nice because I really enjoy performing, I have to say, and so to have the opportunity to do that a lot of the time in lots of different places, I find to be really thrilling, and to meet with so many musicians that I really admire, and to be able to work with them on a regular basis is very, very special. Overwhelming, maybe not so much, because I think that everything that I do is very well planned, and in terms of preparing repertoire very far in advance, and having a sort of shape to the things that I'm doing, and spending enough time with each piece of repertoire, I find to be quite key.
Let's take, for example, you get a call from a conductor 2 or 3 seasons in advance, and they say, I would like to perform together with you this specific difficult score, which is new to you. What would be your ideal way to approach feeling at your best?
I would try to start learning the piece as early as possible, to be honest, because I think that I can learn things quite quickly if I really focus and try. But I prefer not to have to learn things quickly. I prefer to spend time with it and then put it away for a bit of time and then come back to it, and to do as many. I like to do sort of run through performances of the piece as many times before a big sort of performance.
I love that you mentioned these run-through performances, because we always just assume that these top-level performers can just get up there, they've prepared a piece, and it's just going to happen. Those run-throughs, are those in different types of settings, different types of audiences?
Yeah, sometimes in the UK in sort of smaller places, or sometimes it would just be at home and I'll invite a few friends and I'll play through a recital program. And I find that to be so useful, because I think certainly the first time playing a program there's always so much unknownness, and the difference between the first performance and the second performance, I find, is so massive, and so I think it's, for me, I find it essential to do as many of those sort of performances with a bit of pressure. So it has to be for some people, so there is the feeling that it is the real thing, but not too much pressure, because I think it's nice to get as comfortable as possible with the piece, and the idea of performing it before playing it on a bigger platform.
If we're trying to develop that individual voice, if we can become aware of it, how can we also know when we feel ready to take on our next project? For example, so if you're signing, as you did, a major record deal, how do you decide, I'm ready to record that particular piece, or I'm not ready to do it? What do I decide to record?
Feeling ready, I don't know, it's tricky to say what is necessary. But for me, it's normally a feeling of really, really wanting to do something.
Could that also be an extension of what you mentioned earlier about having everything connected from your headspace to your ears to your heart to the physicality? Could that just be the element of focus in finding your voice?
Yeah, that's a really, really wonderful way of putting it, because often when one of those elements aren't connected, that's when I would feel most. That's when I would start to feel uncomfortable on stage, and I feel most comfortable when they are all closely connected, and maybe that takes time, I think, with each piece of music, to be as consistent as possible with my practice. I think that's the one thing that I can hold myself accountable for, and sort of be in control of, and no one these days tells me to practice, so I have to tell I have to tell myself. I mean, I'm lucky. I live with two other musicians, and so even hearing them practice is sort of like a reminder or a motivation to also be doing that.
You also come from a family of gifted musicians. Now, is it 7 of you?
7, yes.
You're all musicians?
Everyone plays an instrument and has learned an instrument to a high level. I mean, the younger siblings have a sister who's 13 and a sister who's 17, so they're still young and sort of discovering what they want to do. The 4 of the older 5 of us are professional musicians, and then I have a sister who's more into writing. But everyone plays an instrument and has loved music for forever.
Let's say you're preparing for a competition or a season that has many different works. How do you balance all of that? Is that something that someone taught you how to do, or you just kind of figured out on the fly?
I think I was definitely taught how and why to practice from quite early on. I've had 3 teachers in my life, all of whom are really were perfect for the time and sort of stage I was at, and really had a massive impact on my thoughts when I practice, and often I'm practicing with what they would probably say in mind, and I find that really helpful. So I'm lucky to have these really wonderful teachers in my life.
So speaking about our inspirations, you've talked about Jacqueline du Pré and Rostropovich. What was it about these 2 larger than life personalities that attracted you?
I would say Jacqueline du Pré was the first, probably the first cellist I listened to, if I can remember, and we listened a lot to her recordings as children in like the car and at home and stuff. And so it's like the sound and the way of playing the cello that I'm very, I grew up being very familiar with and was really inspired by, and this approach of really intense communication and commitment to everything that she plays with such high level of character and expression. And I just love watching and listening to recordings of her playing. And Rostropovich has so many recordings that we can enjoy and is responsible for so many pieces in the cello repertoire as well.
So we have our musical heroes. Sometimes there's the impulse to want to embody some of their enormous spirit, but also perhaps finding our own voice. Is that something that you ever found yourself trying to balance, rather than imitating someone who is awesome, and then also developing your own voice?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many things that I would say I've learnt from listening, but also trying to understand why I love certain things, as opposed to just loving and copying, but understanding actually why, or the intention behind what these people are doing, I find to be really useful, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, talking about your development, so we're here at the Verbier Festival, and you've experienced stepping stones within this setting. You started out as an Academy participant, and then now you're performing on the big stages.
Yes, yeah.
So what has that felt like to be involved here across the years?
I remember the first time coming here, I was part of the Academy, and watching so many memorable performances, and had wonderfully memorable lessons as well. And it's lovely to come back and play chamber music with some really wonderful musicians and watch lots of concerts and perform. It's great. It's really, really wonderful.
Does that feel a little bit easier to play in the summer festival setting as opposed to a subscription series performance with an orchestra? Is it a different set of pressures? I mean, Verbier has also a global audience, and I guess some of the Medici broadcasts get archived.
Playing here, the most terrifying thing is looking out and seeing, I don't know, Misha Maisky in the audience when you're playing Elgar Concerto. It's like, that's quite terrifying, to be quite honest.
Does that ever happen, that someone has heard you play and witnessed your diversity of musical activities, and they say to you, well, now I have to kind of rethink how I'm going to do my musical life because I want to do more of that type of music. Maybe I didn't consider jazz, but now I kind of want to do it. Now I want to improvise in front of an audience.
Yeah, there were a few at the concert I did with Harry. There were a few young people who said, were asking how to get into doing this, or asking if they could have the arrangements that we played for that. And that's really, it's really nice to see. And I try to be encouraging to them for doing that, because I think it often with these things it starts from a sort of source of inspiration or a want to do that based on what you've seen. That's certainly often the case for me.
And for those young musicians who approach you from a place of enthusiasm from what they've heard from you, let's say they also tell you that they're going through a period of self-doubt, an artistic slump, not knowing if they can pursue what is so inspiring them musically. Is there anything that we can offer them in such a difficult scenario?
It is really tricky, but those moments do come in often, in small ways or in big ways as well, and it's tricky to deal with. Often I find reminding myself of why I initially or have loved it, and the things that I have really enjoyed along the way, and trying to remind myself of that by either listening to recordings that I love, or for me reading through some Haydn string quartets. That would really ignite my sort of reason for doing it. But those moments are really, really tricky, I think.
I really love that. I think the next time I hear someone ask that of me, I'll pass along your advice to just read some Haydn quartets.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
Keep it light and bright.
Yeah, exactly.
Sheku, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation about our lives in music. It's really inspiring to get your perspectives, and I wish you much more inspiration and years of music making.
Thank you
so much for being here.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks.